Welcome, everyone, to the New York Hockey Report podcast. This is John McDonald, the publisher of New York Sports Day, and we're live here at MetLife Stadium after the Jets were defeated by the Vikings by a score of 37-17, and I am joined by our football columnist, Jeff Moeller. Jeff, how are you?
I am fine, Joe. Thank you for having me.
So, looks like the Jets were not ready for primetime players today.
I thought they were, Joe. I really did, especially a pretty good first half showing. They really shut down Kirk Cousins. He had a touchdown, but really could have limited them to a couple of field goals. But second half, they seemed to just the defense seemed to tire. And as you said, they weren't ready for the prime time.
And it looked like they made too many turnovers, too many mistakes. Darnold throws a pick deep in the end zone, fumbles. What did he fumble the ball 4 times today?
4 times in the first half. And, Darnold, he had 2 bad picks in the second half. The last one, I don't think it was his fault. The receiver should have had the ball, popped out of his hands. Unfortunately for the Vikings, it pops into a defensive back's hands. But I thought the defense let up in the second half, and when in the locker room, you heard a couple of players that mentioned that they felt that the effort wasn't quite there the second half on defense for the Jets.
And it looks like this was a golden opportunity for the Jets to really be in the conversation. 4-3 going into next week, the tough game going into Chicago, who lost today on pretty much almost close to the end of the game. They had the Hail Mary pass, but it didn't come through for them. It looks like, the Jets, it's like the same old story that we're seeing with the Jets the last few years under the Bowles era. It's like you have some promise, you win some games early, and then it just all falls apart.
Yeah, I think this was a big character test, and this might bounce back on Todd Bowles at the end of the season. Loss like this, a game that, definitely was in their hands at halftime. Came out second half. They just didn't seem to get going. Once they scored that touchdown, their first touchdown, I think it was 7. They won 7 possessions, and really 7 straight possessions with nothing to account for. So, I think this one it could really come back to haunt them, and probably come back to haunt them soon. As you mentioned, a loss here is a big one if they're still thinking playoffs. And now you got to pack up and go to visit the Bears next week, which is not going to be easy.
No, it's definitely not going to be easy, especially going into the Bears. And then you also have a lot of division games coming up. They still play Buffalo twice. They still play the Patriots twice. They have another game down in Miami. So it's not going to get any easier for the Jets as the season goes along. One other interesting thing that we were discussing before the game, this was the first cold weather. I mean, temperature was in the mid-40s today, but kind of a cold weather game. And, Darnold did not look as comfortable out there as he did the last few weeks when it was much warmer.
You're right. You're definitely right. I think he just couldn't get into a pretty solid rhythm throughout the whole game. In spurts, he looked good, but I think overall he struggled. Overthrowing some people, coming up short with some passes. He was pressured, but I was still very impressed on what he's able to do as a rookie. If he sees some pressure, he's able to move out of the pocket. He ran the ball under pressure at various times throughout the game. But I still like what I see from him. And I think it's just gonna take time. And this is a tough one to swallow for Jets fans. But they got to realize, looking at the big picture, this still looks bright. Now the Jets are going to really get tested in these next couple of weeks here.
Right. So, next week it's just back to the drawing board. We're going to be seeing Chicago again, going into Chicago, into Soldier Field. God knows what the temperature's going to be next weekend.
It'll probably be cold.
Usually it does get like that way into Chicago. So, this was a golden opportunity for the Jets to put a stamp on the season, and they just dropped the ball.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at the stats, Darnold on paper doesn't really have a great game here, 17 out of 42. But the running game, the Jets' running game is, they couldn't get the running game going today. And I think if they had the running game going, that really might have taken a lot of pressure off of him throwing the ball. But we haven't seen that consistent running game week in and week out from the Jets. And I think that is something they need to really work on, is trying to get that running game going. And the offensive line really has been pretty solid for them throughout the season. No injuries to account for, and the guys have done a pretty good job. But I think they really got to get their running game moving here.
Yeah, I mean, they do have to get the running game. Powell got hurt today.
Right, Powell got hurt.
And so he left the game. I don't know what Crowell's numbers.
He was 11 for 29.
I mean, 29. Powell's hurt. That's a big thing, especially when you have a 1-2 type of back situation with Crowell and Powell. To lose one of them, then it becomes a situation where one of them has to take the boatload of the snaps, and it just it doesn't work.
Right. And again, you're looking at depth. What kind of depth do the Jets have beyond? If Powell's out for a while, what kind of depth do they have then? That's going to be a big question for them. If they Crowell can be a 25 carry per game back, but he's going to have to produce. We saw what he could do a few weeks ago when he set the franchise record for rushing in a game, but he has to come out and he has to have some big efforts here. And it looks like Powell might be out for a while here too, and that's going to be crucial for the Jets.
Right, and that basically, I think a lot of teams, especially the better defensive teams, are going to load up on the Jets and just pretty much dare Darno to beat them. It's like they know he's going to make mistakes. They know he's a rookie. They know the Jets are going to stick with him. So go right ahead, kid. Throw the ball. See what happens.
I think, if you look at the other side of the ball, the Jets had pressure early on Cousins, and they had him pretty much bottled up the first half, but that pressure didn't really come the second half, and he was able to get out of the pocket and make a lot of things happen. And I think, we saw what the Jets have been able to do the last 2 weeks coming into this game as far as their pass rush and creating turnovers. Now, that, again, the first half we saw a little bit, but with that second half, we didn't tend to see that. So this was a game of a solid first half, but not a solid 4 quarters for the Jets. And I think this is like I said earlier, I think this is a game that's really going to come back to haunt them, and hopefully it doesn't come back to haunt Bulls at the end of the season.
And it's the type of team that they can't give quarters off, they can't give halves off. They need to play 100% throughout the whole game, or we're going to have results like this.
Yeah.
All right, so for Jeff Moeller, this is Joe McDonald with the New York Football Report. We are going to be back after every game that we cover here at MetLife Stadium for the Jets, and even have some Giant reports in there as well. So until next time, we'll see you soon.